Okay, I'm at like 80% after my recent flu bout, and it's now time for the return to the markets, the return to YouTube, the return to content creation. But no one gives a fuck. And that's just not about me, that's about the markets in general. Markets, crypto kind of sentiment, all time low, crypto interest, all time low, sell in May, walk away approaching, summer months approaching. Question is, who really cares? So from where we are now, I think that this is, really important area from that timeline that we've been discussing. And yes, I've been away for a few weeks now, but one of the messages that I've been very, very keen on making sure comes across time and time again is that time is so important to have a handle on and to have an understanding of through areas like this. And we really want to make sure that we are aware of what the higher time frames are telling us versus kind of getting too caught up with the lower time frame price action, or thinking that we're getting immediate V recovery moves, or we're getting, moves in the market that we're going to be so violent we're going to miss them and be sidelined. I think all of that has always been a case of never being true, but is also very important to rationalize through periods of time that we're experiencing at the moment, which from a market perspective is very unusual for the way that we have this level of uncertainty in the market, the way that we have the aggression being shown by some countries in the markets, and the further implications that those decisions, discussions, actions will have on the financial markets too. So where we are from, and we'll start off with BTC and then we'll roll into the indexes. But where we are on a BTC perspective is actually like not a bad position overall. But when we look at the weekly, not a lot going on through this region in particular. Now, today, Easter Sunday, we've started to see some downside reaction to BTC through this little region that we're in. And really, we're locked in a little range over here. So this is where we are right now, 85.8, 82.8. This is our little range that we're locked in for the time being. There are some positives to this in that the market is pushing towards highs, and it's looking as though it wants to try and challenge those highs. It's been grinding around at these highs for one of the more sustained periods of time that we've seen in a while. And so that lends itself into believing that maybe there will be a positive outcome to this, i.e. prices going upwards. And we just need to now see a resolution for that. The daily time frame is by far the simplest and easiest place that you can begin to look at actioning things on here. And the reason why that is the case is just simply using the RSI. And you can see all the way through this area here, the RSI has struggled to break above this 50 level. And this has been the case for nearly 3 months now. So for nearly 3 months, trapped beneath the 50 level and struggling to make any sort of meaningful move above that level. If that situation changes, it becomes the simplest, cleanest, and easiest long signal that we've had over the last 3 months, because something is different in the markets. And whenever we get a situation in which something is different, we have to take action on it. The last time that we saw this was actually the breakout of this 8-month consolidation region through here, where we started to see the RSI extending and pushing away from areas and into areas that it hadn't done throughout that 8-month consolidation. So we started to see that change in momentum, that change in character in the market quite early on, and that enabled us to position in order to take advantage of the move to 100K. Now, this area here, I think, will be very similar. The thing when we're operating with the trend, and the simplest, cleanest way to look at things is to say to yourself, well, this time probably isn't different, so therefore I would expect a rejection here. But if we do not get a rejection here, then I'm looking at taking the long side into this, being the fact that it's the first time it's happened in 3 months. And that in the trending markets is the cleanest way of looking at things. Always anticipate, regardless of what we're thinking about what would be nice to happen to the markets, always anticipate that the markets will remain exactly in line with that trend, and so that we will not see any clearance or upwards momentum here, and we'll see continuation to the downside. And if that situation does not happen, we do indeed get the upside push, then we tail on the back of that and we move into that in line with it. There's no reason to try and preempt it. There's no reason to try and be overly aggressive in positioning early. In fact, if anything, the risk reward through this area would actually be more beneficial to you to short, in given that you're going to be in line with the trend, and we still expect the more violent moves of the market to be to the downside right now. But the BTC picture is setting up very cleanly and simply. And actually, that's what we could hope for when we're in market conditions like we are, and when we're heading towards summertime and golf season starting again. This is actually exactly what we're looking for, because if we do get that upwards push of momentum, we want to make sure that we're able to action that, take advantage of it, make our money, exit the positions, and then wait to see what the market does again. So if we get one of those moments where we get a little bit of green over the course of a couple of weeks, a little bit more excitement to the upside for these markets, then we're going to be in a nice position to be able to extract, and then to be able to sit back again and kind of, put our feet up for the summer period, knowing that we've just made a nice bag before that happened. Everything else in this list, and I was speaking in the Haven last night about this, but everything in this list is piss. Like, realistically, who fucking cares about anything that's in this list right now? Sure, independently on, a lower time frame trade basis, you might identify something that you want to trade. But realistically, for me, and it has been for a number of months in terms of the analysis that I've been producing on YouTube, it's BTC, ETH, Sol, and then probably Fartcoin as being the number one other market out there, just because it has such a difference in terms of its market structure that it is, well worth the interest and certainly the narrative play of this market right now. But this list, who cares, man? Who cares about what dog shit's in this list? Half of this list will be evaporated. The other half of this list will be irrelevant by the time it comes to next cycle, and this list will be completely populated by new markets, new coins, and everything else that's going to come out in those months. And so everything that's within here, I mean, realistically, it makes zero sense looking at. If you're sat in an alt thinking, what does that mean for my altcoin? What does it mean for my positions there? That's completely down to you and a subjective thing. Okay, I think that alts are obviously completely beaten down. If you think your alt survives the beatdown and eventually has its another day in the sun, then great. But it's not really for me to go through this list and try and identify that. I think the far better, broader statement is just labeling everything with the same brush and saying it looks pretty fucked on that side. So we will take a look at Fartcoin, just because, as I said, this market here is very, very interesting to me right now. Structurally, we've broken out of the 2-month range down here, down at the lows. So we're back above this 60 level, which is the important line in the sand for us now. And we can take it as simply as being bullish above here, being bearish below here. And that's as easy as it comes for Fartcoin. I think while the markets are facing the turmoil that they are, and Fartcoin continues to be a very strong performer from the lows, establishing itself a new higher time frame uptrend, this is still a really interesting market. The meme potential for this is huge. We know that it already fucked with TradFi to a huge degree the last time it ran, because TradFi just couldn't get their hands around this market. They couldn't get their heads around this market, because it just blew their minds that something called Fartcoin was trading above the value of major US companies. And you imagine a situation in which the US economy is continuing to struggle, the indexes are continuing to sell off, and Fartcoin is now ripping higher in an uptrend. Once again, it would just cause that complete fucking melting of the minds of the TradFi heads. So I think there's a really good narrative play for this, aside from the fact that I think the TA looks really, really good through here as well. Now, I think the absolute utter sweet spot for this is between 67 and 60. I think that is where you get the absolute pico best risk reward that you're going to get if you have no current exposure to Fartcoin. I think that is the zone that affords you the best risk reward. Higher time frames, we're resetting now the RSIs on the daily. Still got a little bit of room to go, which could lend itself towards this retest zone through here. But everything is looking pretty good on this from a higher time frame perspective. This 3-day bending back around, reclaiming the 50, looking really solid, breaking through that key level. Weekly, just moving towards that 50 reset after the expansive initial run of Fartcoin. Really, really good looking market overall. And even here, lower time frame, you could look at this as the potential for a correction and a move back down into a zone around 80 cents that it's tested on a number of occasions before. So Fartcoin looking very, very good. BTC still in that indecision point. right at the top of those highs, looking as though we could see upwards momentum. Not necessarily sure that it will transpire. Again, best off sticking with the trend. And if anything else changes, then we can dive into a position there. And then the other market that's probably most interesting is actually in the TradFi world, and it is GRINDR. So yes, we're buying gay stocks because this market looks really, really strong through here. So clean breakout through here of the 1880s, call it $19 just to make it simple. It's been a really tricky area for grinders to be able to pass through. So start seeing on the daily time frame here as well. Had this consistent resistance points over here, 25% correction at the start of March, immediate V recovery back into the resistance point through here, a little bit more chopping around, and now starting to make that push. Every time frame from the 3 days through to the weekly looks as though this is reset. Looks as though it's had its correction and now looks as though it's going to move into this fresh high territory through here and start making a move, hopefully towards the 25s would like to see over in this area here. So I think Grinder's in a really good spot. Now, obviously, through this chart, when we're just looking at it as simply as this, if we end up trading back below here, that's no good. If we trade back into here, that's an add to the position. And if we never touch this again, that's an even better sign because it's just a show of the strength of the market after clearing through 19. So we've got some very simple, again, risk reward through operating through this region on Grindr. So gay stocks and Fartcoin typically are what we're going to be looking at here, just because they represent two markets that are very easy and are trading into great levels. And then the last market that we'll cover off, just it's getting a lot of attention recently, is gold. Gold is super, super important. It's in price discovery. You don't short it. And it's a very easy market to continue trading to the upside. When you start seeing higher time frame divergences, weekly, 3-day, etc., then you can start looking about trading it back to the downside or getting some value back on the short end of it. But for now, gold, price discovery, don't touch it, right? That's it. You don't short that. So buy Grindr, buy Fartcoin, wait for BTC to make a decision. Welcome back to me.